So as we all know, this afternoon's forum is focused on housing and housing finance. We are featuring the work of Veronica Warnock and Frank Warnock on housing finance systems. Now, last Friday, they've just come back from a trip to Bogota, Colombia. So last Friday, they presented this work at the Banking Association of Colombia's annual conference. The conference theme was, quote, "A roof over everyone's head is everyone's responsibility," end quote. In other words, how to address a shortage of 1 million homes in Colombia. So if our visiting professors are a little jet-lagged, perhaps they will be forgiven. Our main presenter is Dr. Veronica Warnock. She is visiting professor at the Asian Institute of Management and senior lecturer and Batten Institute Fellow at the Darden Business School of the University of Virginia. She has been a consultant or research fellow for various international organizations, including the Inter-American Development Bank, the World Bank, and the Hong Kong Monetary Authority. She is currently external advisor on, quote, "Housing finance in Latin America and the Caribbean. What is holding it back?" End quote. A year-long, multi-country, multi-team research program at the IADB. At the core of Dr. Warnock's research is financial sector development, with a focus on housing finance, bond market development, and inclusive banking. Much of her work is practitioner-focused. She works with housing microlenders in South Africa, helping them develop custom credit scoring systems so that they can better assess risk. And at both Darden and AIM, she teaches a seminar practicum course. It's called Markets and Human Hope, in which students strive to form private, financially sustainable ventures to directly address human development problems. Now, previously, Dr. Warnock was assistant professor in the Urban and Environmental Planning Department of the School of Architecture at UVA. She was also senior economist and director at the Mortgage Bankers Association of America and research associate at Haver Analytics. She received her PhD in economics from Fordham University and her AB in economics from Ateneo de Manila University. Our moderator for today's forum is Professor Frank Warnock. Professor Warnock, also a visiting professor at AIM, is Paul Hamaker, Associate Professor of Business Administration at the University of Virginia's Darden Business School. He's also a research associate at the National Bureau of Economic Research, or NBER, and adjunct senior fellow for international finance at the Council on Foreign Relations. He consults for many international institutions and central banks, and is Veronica's partner in crime in her financial sector development work. We will start with a 15-minute presentation from Veronica, and then we will turn to our panel for short 5-minute interventions and presentations. After that, if we all keep to our time limits, we should have enough time for open discussion involving participants in the audience as well as the panel members. Dr. Warnock.
Hello. Thanks, Professor Tiong-son, and good afternoon to everyone. It is indeed an honor to be part of this forum and to have a chance to share our research with all of you. Frank and I thank AIM President Professor De Jesus, Professor Vicky Liquanan, and Erwin Tiong-son for making our visit enjoyable. We are especially grateful to Vicky and Erwin, who have gone over and beyond for this forum, putting together a distinguished panel of leaders from a range of sectors. I was told we also have distinguished guests in the audience, so we hope to hear from them during Q&A as well. 2008 marked the point when more people in the world live in urban than rural areas, with the developing region accounting now for 75% of the world's urban population. Indeed, the Philippines is among the countries with the fastest growing urban population. It has now over 60 million living in urban areas. The capital, Manila, ranks as the 19th fastest growing city in the world. And the forecast is that the number of people living in urban areas in more developed regions will rise only slightly. Less developed regions will experience a sharp rate of increase. And the Philippines, which actually passed the 50% mark in the early 1990s, is forecast to grow to over 75% urban by 2030. So what's the big deal? The benefits of urbanization are quite obvious. Cities are centers of economic activity. Urban centers generally offer better jobs and access to better health care. They are centers of education, information, and innovation, and they can offer better living conditions and better quality of life. But we know well how urbanization has left segments of the population behind. Urban poverty is widespread. The shelter dimension of poverty is manifested in non-durable housing, no security of tenure, lack of access to water and sanitation, housing on dangerous slopes, riverbanks, next to railroad tracks, and as such, vulnerable to natural disasters. In the Philippines, the slum population grew to over 22 million by 2005. And clearly, the housing problem in the Philippines requires extensive and innovative solutions. Turning now to the research we've done, we know that the housing sector is complex, involving many interrelated markets. The focus of our study is a narrow but important market, the market for housing finance, which sits in the overall financial system that should efficiently facilitate funds from savers to borrowers. So we start off by recognizing that the provision of housing finance is, in many cases, a binding constraint that must be addressed to sustainably provide adequate housing. Housing is a major purchase, 4 to 8 times the annual income, that is affordable only when payments can be spread out over time. So our study investigated the determinants of depth of mortgage markets across 62 countries. Again, this is only one aspect of housing and housing finance. What we do not address in this research are things like smaller non-collateralized loans for incremental housing, which can be important at the lower end. But the better the mortgage market works, the broader is the access to housing finance for all. Starting with this striking picture, the size of mortgage markets differs greatly across countries. One part of our research agenda is aimed at answering one simple question. What are the fundamental reasons behind the differences in the size of mortgage markets across countries? The Philippines mortgage market is about 10% of its GDP, larger than some countries but much smaller than others. Why is that? Why do mortgage markets vary a lot across regions? And within emerging Asia, why do some countries have larger mortgage markets than others? We used a simple but informative framework of the demand for and supply of housing finance to answer these questions. Demand for housing finance is demand derived in large part from the demand for housing, which itself is a function of income levels and the rate of household formation, as well as tax incentives and subsidies, and also the price of housing finance, that is, the relevant interest rate. The supply of housing finance depends on lenders' willingness and ability to invest funds in housing. Lenders will consider the extent and usefulness of information on potential borrowers, the ability to value property, the ability to secure collateral in case of default, and macroeconomic stability. Potential sources of funds such as deposits and the secondary market also influence the supply of housing finance.